Hello, beautiful people. Good morning, good night, good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're watching this from. Welcome to Faith-Based Workplace. I'm Solomon Savoy. This video is triggers after narcissistic abuse, what they don't tell you. We'll get to this video right after this. Excuse me. Hey, welcome back. Hopefully you liked that little intro I did. I actually did that myself, believe it or not. But let's get right into this one. Triggers after narcissistic abuse, what they don't tell you. First, recognizing triggers is a process. So the triggers or triggering or things that trigger you, depending on how you want to say it, it is a process of recognizing that. And I believe sometimes you don't even know that you have triggers, especially when you come out of a narcissistic relationship. You don't even know some of the things that might trigger you. We're going to discuss several of those things that can lead to different triggers or lead to you maybe even shutting down. And sometimes these shutdowns can happen, believe it or not, in public or at work, or just doesn't depend where you're at. Actually, it just comes over you. So let's get into some of these things. We ever noticed that certain words or phrases can actually trigger you? So certain words that you might have heard the narcissist say like over and over. So some of those words and phrases, you might hear somebody say that, and it's just a trigger for you. And you immediately, your skin might get a little clammy, or you start sweating, or you get a little nervous. You got the high anxiety going on. So you have to realize that some of these words, and we can't pick up on everything, but some things we know that they done told us over and over, and we might be able to recognize some of those things. But once you recognize the trigger, we can also find ways to cope with these triggers, because it shouldn't be a thing that anybody that says something to us then automatically triggers and we take off running like a with our tail between our legs and things like that. That's not what I'm saying. But these triggers, they do have a lasting effect sometimes. And it depends on the person. I believe it depends on where they at with God and where they at with coping with triggers. Something else that might trigger you, especially if you came out of a abusive relationship, and I'm talking about physical abuse more with this one. It'll be physical touch. So sometimes, you have a woman that, let's just go with the woman that might have came out of a physical abusive relationship that will lead to, maybe she took 7-8 months and she thinks she's ready to date. Well, after that, she get with a guy, and then the first time he goes to, rub on her arm, it's a trigger for her. And, you see it on a movie sometimes on a TV show, but this happens in real life where, it'll be a trigger for the woman. You wondering, as the guy, you like, what did I do something wrong? Or, what is up and things like that. And then even as the woman, you're like, well, I thought I was ready to love and I thought I was ready to move past this. But it's just recognize it is a trigger for you. And just because they touch you, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily, stop dating them or anything. That means you have to work on yourself. You have more healing to do. So if they willing to wait for you and go through that healing with you, then so forth and so on, carry on. But, just realize that might be a trigger for you, physical touch. And, like I said, it could be, a touch wherever they touch you, your arm, whatever. But, sometimes those things will trigger you, especially if the narcissist always touch you in that certain spot, or, always kiss you on your neck. And it's just like, you don't like that anymore. It just, it's a turn off for you. What used to be a turn on for you after being with a narcissist can turn into a turn off, and now you don't really want to, deal with those things. And, I get it. I mean, some things just come and some things they go. So let's keep on moving. We talk about this sometimes. I don't talk about it as much, but I'm going to start communicating a little bit more about this, about CPTSD. It can set limits on you. And what is CPTSD? Let's read this. It's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, just like PTSD, like people catching the military or they've been in a violent car wreck. They can have PTSD. You can get a lot of, you can get PTSD from a lot of different things. Witnessing a murder can be another way. But this one, we're talking about CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. What this is it's basically the same symptoms as PTSD, but then you have some more lingering symptoms, difficulty of controlling your emotions. And this will be due highly because you just got out of a narcissistic relationship. So you have to realize that CPTSD is a real thing. People don't believe that PTSD is a real thing, but it is. And it's just like CTE, with football players, it's a real thing. All these things, people try to wave it off like it's not real, but it is. It's definitely real. So let's keep moving. Let's get into our first Bible verse. It's going to be 2 Timothy 1:7. And I've said this verse before, and I'm pretty sure you've heard this verse before. For God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. So just realize that these triggers, it shouldn't scare you. You can have your little pity party. I said on the video before. Shannon has said on the video before. You can have your little pity party or your little downtime when you're not feeling yourself. But at some point, you need to rise up. So God didn't give us a spirit of fear. So don't let a trigger, trigger you to the point where you're not leaving your house and you don't want to go outside because you might see the narcissist, or you see somebody that look like the narcissist, or you don't want someone touching you because things that happen. You have to work through these things and work through these issues. You have to pray deliverance prayers like Shannon always talk about, and also you have to work on yourself. At the end of the day, you have to work on yourself. It's more than just going to God in prayer. It's spiritual warfare. So the narcissist basically is winning if you stand in your home and you're not talking to other people. I'm not saying people. I'm not talking about other men or women. You're trying to date. I'm just talking about other people in general. Because they have you alone. They already got you alone. They might have you in a state where you're, like foreign to you. So you're not even in the same city where you was, raised, and they got you way off in this other state. And then they did all these things to you. Now you're lonely in a state by yourself. And you're like, wow, you're in a home by yourself. You're in a state by yourself, in a city by yourself. You see where I'm going with this. So now all these factors are adding up, and there's all triggers when you go outside. You see people that look like them and everything. So maybe you need to go back home. Maybe that might be the easiest way out. And sometimes we don't want to take, and I say go back home. I ain't saying go live with your parents, but maybe you need to move back to where you have familiar faces, familiar family members and friends and things like that to help you with these triggers. You need to go to therapy. You need to pray about these things, but you need to also put yourself in a position where you have to face your trigger, face your fears. So like psychology, they got a thing where, if like you have PTSD or something like that, and let's say you like grocery stores, you get nervous when they got a lot of people. Well, to face that trigger, one of the things they want you to do is like try to stay in there as long as you can till your anxiety is real, real high. Then you say, you know what, I can do this. I can do this. And sooner or later, like it might start out with just 5 minutes. Then it might go up to, 7, 10, 15, so forth and so on. It's going to come a point in time, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, where you're going to be able to face that trigger and be able to stay in the store, as long as you want to. It's the same thing with CPTSD and narcissistic abuse and things like that. You're going to have to put yourself in a position where it's going to be a trigger for you, but you have to work through it. Just keep biting at the apple until the apple is gone. How the saying goes. So let's keep on moving. Sometimes, specific people can be a trigger. So, like I just mentioned, certain people that look like the narcissist you was with, and even beyond that, people that act and do things and say things and, just that, that crowd, what I'm saying, that has maybe narcissistic traits, or they just act like the person that you was with, whether it's male or female. So sometimes specific people can actually be a trigger for you. Again, we can make it a quick decision to help us out with that. Don't hang around those type of people. Remember, I've said this before. Sometimes your circle, it gets smaller, but sometimes even, after dealing with narcissistic abuse, we need to take our circle ourselves and re-examine it. Re-examine the friends and people that we have around us, sometimes family members too. And, you got to look at them people and be like, well, these are people I've been hanging around for years. They not doing nothing. I didn't told them about narcissistic abuse, told them what happened to me. They don't understand. So you find your tribe, like people like to say, you find your tribe is what I'm getting at. So remember, specific people can cause triggers for you, but a way to work around that, stop hanging around those particular people. I know it sounds simple. It's harder than that, but let's think about it for a second. Let's keep moving. Certain situations, like when you're with somebody that's, they anger, they yelling, they screaming, cursing you out, things like that, that can be a trigger for you. So, that triggering, and what's crazy is you might not even realize that it's a trigger until you're away from the person that actually triggers you. Because when you're with them, it's like I said, it's like that spirit of fear and you scared and, your emotions all over the place. But when you leave them, you give it somebody the first time they scream at you, realize, and you might scream back and you probably not a person that usually scream back or do anything or yell back like that, but you realize this is a trigger. So you have to know your triggers and recognize them and then work through those triggers. I'm telling you, it can be done. I'm still working on some of my triggers, but I've come a long way on those triggers. So it is, how do you say that? Light at the end of the tunnel, like they like to say. I don't know who they is, but it's somebody, standing too close to someone. So sometimes, might be a trigger, your personal space, you know what I'm saying? So, I know we're doing social distancing. Some people are, the 6 feet, but even with these triggers, maybe that 6 feet, 3 to 6 feet might be a good thing for you to stay away from people, because that might be a trigger for you because somebody too close and, you're scared they might do something or try to harm you or things like that. So that to me is, most people, don't like people too close to them. I know when I was in Iraq, some people will run up, it's just something they do. They'll run up like real close to you. Within, I'm talking about 8-9 inches. I used to have to take my weapon, not pointed at them, but I shoved them away and tell them to back up because, you're in my personal space. Because for one, I don't trust in this situation. I don't trust what you're trying to do. I don't know you. I don't trust you. And I know a lot of people, is trying to kill us. So you couldn't just have these people walking up on you. It's the same thing with, after leaving a narcissistic situation, you can't just have people all in your space. And when I say space, I'm talking about your home. I'm talking about your workplace. How some of us work in offices or you work in cubicles. Well, maybe you don't want people all standing in your cubicle talking. Hey, man, just ask them politely. Do y'all mind taking your conversation, over there or whatever? I'm trying to work. So this goes either way, at work or at home. So just realize this. So certain triggers can have you react a certain way. But once we cope with these triggers and work through them, that's when we start getting to some good stuff and we start going through the healing process. And that's what we want. So the last thing, certain smells. I know when I got back from Iraq, a trigger for me was like certain smells. It would actually remind me of like different missions I had did in Iraq. I know that sounds crazy, but yes. So I had different, smells that I would smell, and it would remind me of a place that's almost 2,000 miles away. Crazy as it may sound, it's the same thing with triggers dealing with like certain colognes or perfumes or certain smells they might have had in the house, candles and stuff. That could be a trigger for you. You might break down and start crying. You might get angry. You might get upset. You start thinking about that person, and that's what we don't want. We don't want to think about that person. We don't want to give them no area in our brain. How they say that, rent free. So now you can't come in here, Satan or the demon that tried to come in and occupy your space. So just realize that. Those things you have to realize, what's going on. So last, I'm going to leave y'all with a Bible verse before we get out of here. I have to do at least 2. Sometimes I do 1, but, I try to do 2 a little more. But this one is 1 Peter 5:10. And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore. Listen to this good, the last part. Will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. So after you go through all this dealing with the narcissist, all the fights, all the anguish, all the emotional abuse, all the mental abuse, all these abuses, physical abuse, financial abuse, all the depression, anxiety, after all that, God is telling you he will restore you of all that. So I'm here to tell y'all that, trust me, it's a beautiful thing. It sucks when you're in this situation because, you're like in a sunken place. You're like in quicksand. You don't know how to get out. You don't know who's going to help you because you didn't told people and they don't believe you. But I'm here to tell you that when you go through all that, you go to God in prayer, you go to spiritual warfare, you start reading some of these books, start really paying attention to some of these YouTube channels. Like, I know y'all watching this channel, but watch some of these other people that have channels and you can learn from this. I believe that is what, you're healing, and then these triggers and things like that, that's when they're starting to fall to the wayside. It takes time. I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight. It takes time. Like I said, the thing with Walmart, you got to put yourself in a position where that trigger is like eating at you. But every time you just go a little bit long. Okay, this time I'm going to do it for a few more minutes. And then when you do it, it's like marking a check box. Check. So you're like, okay, I did it this time for 10 minutes. I did it this time for 20. Before you know it, you're going to be in a situation where you can deal with your triggers, and your triggers are going to be at a minimum. Now, every now and then something's going to rise up and it might trigger you. But for the most part, we can deal with them. I think that is crucial to our survival. I think that's crucial to us, going through our healing. And I think, triggers, if you're working on them and you continually working on them, it's a thing that's, you can't, like I said, you can't do it overnight. You have to be continuous process. I think you continually work on your triggers and dealing with them, I think you will end up in a better place. Hey, that's the video for this week. If this is your first time, man, please click the bell, become a subscriber. We a growing channel. Go ahead, like the video, share the video, comment on the video. We're trying to trigger the algorithm, to get the content out to more people, So, hey, again, I'll be here every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and also catch my live 7 p.m. Central Standard Time as well. Also, my wife is at Narc Free Living, Shannon's Voice, so you can go over there at narcfreeliving.com for apparel and things like that. All right, man. It was a blessing, talking to y'all this week. I'll see y'all next time on Faith-Based Workplace. Thank you.